So what is it like to fly in the era of COVID? Well, I just found out a few days ago. Hi, my name is Andy Teach, host of Andy's Awesome Adventures, and I'm going to tell you about my experience and then give you some tips. So I flew from Los Angeles, LAX, to Newark, New Jersey, and here I am in the Garden State of New Jersey. And the main reason I flew here was to see my family, who I haven't seen in a year. So I had actually canceled 4 trips between March and July, and back then it was not as safe to fly because masks were not mandated. But the rules have changed and things are much safer. And I'm not recommending you fly or don't fly, but I just want to tell you about my experience. So the first thing I would say is when you book your flight is to book a window seat. And why is that? Well, when you have the flight attendants going back and forth in the aisle, you have people going to the restroom. If you're sitting on the aisle, you're going to be kind of in close proximity to them. And yes, everyone is wearing a mask, which is great. But with social distancing, you're better off on the window side. The next thing you should think about is not just the flight or the airport, but it's the ride getting to and from the airport. So I would say avoid vans where you might have a lot of people in a small space in a van. You're better off taking a taxi or Uber or Lyft. And if you're a sole passenger, it's just you and the driver, or if you have people with you, at least you know where they've been. And when you get to the airport, I thought they'd take a temperature check, but I don't think they did. I wasn't aware of any. If there's a line for the kiosk, just make sure you allow some space between you and the people in front of you. When you get past security and you go to the waiting area, I always avoid the waiting area anyway because I'm paranoid about getting cold. So imagine what it's like during the era of COVID. So at LAX, they actually blocked off 2 seats at a time, which is great. That allows for more social distancing, but I stayed far away from that. Now, when I got called to get on the plane, there was no social distancing when people were going to the gate and getting on the plane. So I waited till everyone was there, and then I got on the plane. So that was good, I think. But I would recommend that the airlines kind of keep an eye on the social distancing aspect when they call people to board. So Alaska Airlines, which I took, they blocked the middle seats, which is great. Thank you, Alaska Airlines. That makes a big difference. Plus, I had the aisle seat empty. So I basically had the whole row to myself. So once I boarded, I put on my face mask and my face shield. The flight was pretty good. It was a very clean airplane. It's a new airplane. It was a 737-800/900. I'm not sure which one, but it was very clean. And I noticed in the pockets, the seat pockets, there were no magazines. There was nothing in there. Then when we landed, everyone, as usual, would get up all at once to get their bags. And again, there's no social distancing. So I waited until everyone literally got off the plane. I was the last one off the plane. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Nice and early.
It's gonna be a grind going
I'm the
back.
last one off the plane.
The wind.
Oh, we had like 200 mile an hour.
I made it, my first COVID era flight. And my strategy was when I went to the baggage carousel, is to stay away from everyone. But by the time I got there, because I was the last one off the plane, there was no one there. So it was great. I just got my bag, left the airport, and that was it. So I know what you're thinking. Andy, you are rocking that look. Yes, I am. In fact, I think I'm going to be on the cover of Face Shield magazine. Do I want to wear a face mask and a face shield? No. Do I feel more comfortable wearing them? Yes. Am I increasing my odds of not getting COVID? Yes. Maybe slightly, but I'll take any advantage I can get.
Well, since I flew to New Jersey, I wanted to give you a brief look at the Garden State in the fall. I grew up here and lived in Jersey from the ages of 8 to 25 years old. New Jersey and you, perfect together. New Jersey has a long list of states whose residents have to self-quarantine for 14 days upon arrival. When I flew, California was not on the list, but 2 days after I returned to California, it was put back on the list. It was now time to fly from Newark to Los Angeles, and unlike LAX, there were no seats blocked at Newark Airport in the boarding area. Here you get a closer look at the boarding process, and again, I think the airlines need to do a better job monitoring social distancing. Once again, I sat in the window seat, which also affords you some great views. The middle seat was blocked, but this time someone was sitting in the aisle seat in my row. I flew again on a 737-900. The flight from Los Angeles to Newark was about 4.5 hours, but the return trip from Newark to Los Angeles was 6 hours, a half hour longer than usual because of headwinds. Unlike the first flight, this longer flight had no turbulence to speak of. As we approached Los Angeles, you can see why it's referred to as the City of Light. Once we landed, I again waited until everyone else got off the plane. This time an announcement was made saying that they would call every other row, but passengers were still close together. The baggage carousel at LAX was a little more crowded than the one at Newark, so I eventually went to an area where no one else was around. Now here's a quick summary of my feelings about flying during the era of COVID.
Once again, I'm not saying to fly or not fly. Keep in mind two things though. I hate to fly, okay? I have traveled 500,000 miles, 500,000 miles by air around the world, but I still hate to fly. And I'm extremely paranoid about getting COVID. But I actually felt fairly comfortable flying this time around. I'm not saying I'm gonna do it a lot more, but I like the fact the middle seats were blocked. I like the fact that everyone's wearing a mask, it's mandated. There is social distancing in some areas. I think they can improve that, but overall, I think it was a good experience. So if you have any questions or any comments, or if you yourself have flown during the era of COVID, I'd like to hear what you have to say in the comment section. And thank you for watching.